Before another heartbeat slips away, listen closely, because tonight's story begins in a place where ordinary moments quietly become unforgettable. Somewhere, in a room you have never seen, a person whose name is recognized by countless others has paused in the middle of a busy day. Surrounded by conversations, responsibilities, flashing screens, and endless expectations, their attention drifted somewhere unexpected. It drifted towards someone they have never been able to fully explain. Toward a face that appears in quiet moments like sunlight breaking through heavy clouds. Toward a presence that refuses to disappear from their thoughts. They cannot explain why. Neither can anyone around them. Yet something invisible has begun moving through both of your stories at the exact same time. You are not hearing a prediction. You are entering a fictional journey about hope, timing, and the mysterious ways lives can unexpectedly intersect. Imagine this moment as though you are watching the opening scene of a beautiful film, where every small detail matters more than anyone realizes. The evening air carries a peaceful silence. Somewhere far away, city lights shimmer across glass buildings while people hurry home, unaware that one conversation is about to alter everything for someone they have never met. Inside a quiet office overlooking the skyline, this well-known individual sits alone after everyone else has left. Their calendar is overflowing. Their schedule has been planned months in advance. Every minute of tomorrow already belongs to someone else. Yet instead of reviewing another meeting, they find themselves staring through the window. Not at the city. Not at the lights. At a memory. A strange memory that feels more like a dream than something they actually experienced. They remember standing in a place filled with warm sunlight, hearing laughter they cannot identify, and feeling as though someone was walking beside them. Every time they try to remember the person's face, the image fades before it becomes clear. Still, one feeling refuses to disappear. It matters, they whisper to themselves. But what exactly matters? That unanswered question follows them into the next morning. Meanwhile, far from the noise surrounding that famous life, another ordinary day begins elsewhere. Birds sing outside a window. A cup of coffee cools before the first sip. Familiar routines unfold exactly as they always have. Nothing appears unusual on the surface, yet something inside quietly feels different. It is the kind of feeling people rarely discuss because it arrives without explanation. A subtle sense that life is gently preparing to introduce a chapter that has not yet revealed its title. You cannot point to evidence. You cannot explain the sensation. But you know something has shifted. That quiet awareness becomes impossible to ignore after an unexpected encounter. A stranger smiles for no obvious reason. A forgotten song suddenly begins playing. An old photograph appears while searching for something completely unrelated. Tiny moments begin forming a pattern, almost like invisible threads weaving together a story that neither side can yet understand. Across the country, the well-known figure attends an important gathering. Cameras flash. Reporters ask polished questions. Every answer sounds confident. Every smile appears effortless. Yet beneath that practiced composure, another conversation quietly unfolds. What if I'm overlooking the most important invitation of my life? The thought arrives suddenly. It interrupts every prepared response. It refuses to leave. Their closest advisor notices the distraction. "You've seemed different lately," the advisor says. "Tired?" "No." "Worried?" "No." "Then what is it?" A long silence follows. Finally comes the answer. "I keep feeling like someone I've never met is somehow connected to where I'm supposed to go next." The advisor laughs gently, assuming exhaustion has created unusual thoughts. But the famous individual does not laugh. Because the feeling has become impossible to dismiss. Days pass. Instead of fading, the strange pull grows stronger. They begin declining events they once would have accepted without hesitation. They linger longer after interviews. They notice details they previously ignored. A child waving from across the street. An elderly musician smiling while playing alone. A handwritten letter tucked inside a forgotten book. Every unexpected moment seems to whisper the same quiet message. Slow down. Pay attention. Someone important is moving closer to your story. Back in another corner of the world, life continues without any knowledge of these events. Responsibilities still demand attention. Bills still arrive. Dreams still compete with doubt. Yet even in ordinary routines, unusual interruptions begin appearing. A phone vibrates with a notification that turns out to be nothing significant. A friend unexpectedly mentions an opportunity no one had discussed before. An invitation almost gets deleted because it appears too ordinary to matter. Almost. That single word becomes more important than anyone realizes. Because history often changes through moments people nearly overlook. The famous individual cannot sleep that night. Instead of turning on another television interview or reviewing tomorrow's speeches, they open an old notebook filled with thoughts written years earlier. One sentence catches their attention immediately. When the right invitation comes, it won't arrive dressed like greatness. It will arrive disguised as curiosity. They stare at the words. Their heartbeat slows. Curiosity. That is exactly what they have been feeling. Not certainty. Not fear. Curiosity. A gentle pull toward something unknown that somehow feels deeply familiar. The next afternoon, an unexpected visitor enters their office carrying a small envelope. It arrived without much information, the assistant explains. No return address? None. The envelope contains only a simple card. No elaborate design. No expensive decoration. Just a quiet sentence. Some journeys begin the moment you decide someone you've never met is worth believing in. There is no signature. Only an address. A place unfamiliar to everyone in the room. The assistant shrugs. Probably another publicity event. But something inside the famous individual says otherwise. They carefully fold the card and place it inside their pocket instead of throwing it away with dozens of other invitations. For reasons they cannot explain, this one feels different. Not louder. Not more impressive. Simply, true. Elsewhere, another seemingly insignificant decision unfolds. Someone hesitates before accepting an invitation that arrived through entirely ordinary circumstances. It could easily be ignored. Nothing about it appears extraordinary. Yet something whispers, "Go." Not because success is guaranteed. Not because every dream instantly comes true. But because certain doors only reveal their purpose after someone chooses to walk toward them. The emotional distance between two separate lives quietly becomes smaller. Neither person realizes how close their stories have come to intersecting. Neither understands why recent events feel connected. Yet invisible timing continues moving with remarkable precision. The famous individual finally asks a question they have been avoiding. What if this invitation isn't about my career? Silence fills the room. Then another thought follows. What if it's about meeting someone whose life is meant to change mine? The words surprise even them. They have spent years believing they were always the one changing other people's lives. The possibility that someone unknown could transform their own feels almost impossible. And yet, for the first time in years, hope feels stronger than certainty. As evening settles once again, both lives unknowingly move toward the same destination. One packs a suitcase without fully understanding why. The other almost changes plans at the last minute. Rain begins falling. Traffic slows. Flights are delayed. Schedules shift. Tiny inconveniences appear to push everything slightly off course. Or perhaps they are placing everything exactly where it belongs. Because just before midnight, the famous individual receives one final message connected to that mysterious invitation. Only 6 words appear on the screen. You're closer than you've ever imagined. Their expression changes instantly. Not because they finally understand, but because they recognize the sender's name. It is someone connected to a secret from years ago, a secret they believed had disappeared forever. And that forgotten secret contains a single photograph. A photograph that may finally reveal why one unknown person has remained in their thoughts all this time. The moment they turned the picture over and read the handwritten words on the back, everything they believed about coincidence is about to change. The photograph trembled ever so slightly between their fingers, not because of the weight of the paper, but because of the memory it carried. Time seemed to slow until even the distant sound of rain against the window disappeared. On the back, written in fading blue ink, were only a few simple words. When the time is right, you will recognize the person not by fame, but by the peace they bring into your life. There was no date. No signature. Yet those words unlocked a door inside their heart that had remained sealed for years. Suddenly, they remembered the elderly woman who had handed them the photograph after a charity event long ago. At the time, she had smiled with quiet certainty and said, "Keep this. One day it will answer a question you haven't learned to ask yet." They had laughed politely and tucked it away, never imagining that forgotten moment would one day return with such astonishing clarity. That memory refused to stand alone. As they searched deeper, another forgotten detail emerged. The woman had spoken about how life often disguises its greatest gifts behind ordinary decisions. She never mentioned success, recognition, or achievement. Instead, She described a meeting that would arrive only after both people had become strong enough to value one another without expectation. At the time, those words sounded poetic but impractical. Years of relentless ambition had buried them beneath endless schedules and public appearances. Yet now, standing alone in the quiet office, every sentence resurfaced with startling precision, as though it had been patiently waiting for this exact evening. Across the miles, another quiet transformation was taking place. A small community gathering, almost overlooked because of other responsibilities, was drawing closer. It wasn't glamorous. There were no cameras, no grand stage, no promise of headlines. Just people coming together to celebrate stories of hope, perseverance, and unexpected kindness. The invitation had arrived weeks ago and nearly disappeared beneath everyday obligations. Even now, there was hesitation. Would attending really matter? Would anyone even notice? Still, every attempt to decline left behind an unshakable feeling that walking away might mean missing something impossible to replace. Meanwhile, the well-known individual made an unusual request that surprised everyone around them. Instead of preparing another major appearance, they quietly cancelled several engagements and instructed their team to leave one day completely unscheduled. Confusion spread through the office. Colleagues questioned whether something was wrong. Reporters speculated about health, exhaustion, or private negotiations. None of those explanations came close to the truth. The reality was much quieter. They simply wanted enough silence to discover why one mysterious invitation felt more important than every prestigious event filling the rest of their calendar. The following morning unfolded differently than either of them expected. Sunlight broke through the retreating clouds, painting the roads with a gentle golden glow after the night's rain. The famous individual decided to drive without an escort for the first time in years. They rolled down the window, allowing fresh air to replace the carefully controlled atmosphere they had grown accustomed to. Every passing neighborhood revealed scenes they had long forgotten how to notice: a father teaching his daughter to ride a bicycle, an elderly couple laughing while tending flowers, musicians sharing melodies with strangers who paused simply because the music made them smile. For the first time in a long while, success no longer felt measured by applause. It felt measured by presence. As those ordinary moments unfolded, an unexpected emotion quietly settled into their heart: not excitement, not certainty, but humility. They realized how many years had been spent chasing destinations while overlooking the beauty of becoming. They wondered how many remarkable people they had unknowingly passed because their eyes had been fixed on the next achievement instead of the person standing quietly beside the road. That realization carried both gratitude and regret. If this invitation truly led to someone significant, they wanted to arrive not as a celebrity, but simply as another human being willing to listen. Elsewhere, preparations for the gathering continued with equal simplicity. Chairs were arranged. Fresh flowers decorated small tables. Volunteers greeted one another with warm smiles. Nothing about the setting suggested history was preparing to unfold. It looked like hundreds of other community events held every year. Yet hidden among the ordinary details was one subtle difference. A final addition had been made to the program that very morning. A guest speaker had accepted an invitation at the last possible moment. Their name remained confidential until arrival, leaving everyone curious about the surprise waiting to be revealed. Hours later, a quiet conversation unfolded inside the vehicle carrying the well-known guest toward the destination. Their longtime driver finally broke the silence. "You've traveled to places all over the world," he said. "I've never seen you this thoughtful before a trip." The answer came slowly. "Usually I know exactly why I'm going somewhere. This time, I only know I was supposed to say yes." The driver nodded without another question. Somehow, that explanation felt complete. As afternoon faded into evening, both journeys moved steadily toward the same location, yet unseen circumstances began shifting beneath the surface. A bridge closure redirected traffic. A delayed train changed arrival times. A sudden phone call caused one volunteer to rearrange seating assignments. None of these events appeared meaningful on their own. Together, however, they quietly altered the sequence of moments that was about to unfold. What had seemed like inconvenience slowly revealed itself as careful alignment. The gathering began with laughter, music, and heartfelt stories shared by people whose names would never appear in newspapers. One speaker described overcoming loneliness through simple acts of compassion. Another shared how a stranger's encouragement had changed an entire family's future. Every story carried the same quiet reminder: significance is rarely announced before it arrives. It grows unnoticed until someone looks back and realizes an ordinary day became unforgettable. Then, at last, the confidential guest entered. No dramatic entrance. No spotlight. No fanfare. The room simply grew still. Some recognized the familiar face immediately. Others noticed only the kindness in their expression before realizing who had quietly walked through the door. Instead of taking the stage right away, they paused near the entrance, almost as though searching for someone they could not identify. Their eyes moved gently across the room, not with celebrity confidence, but with sincere curiosity. And in that very same room, someone else experienced an unexpected feeling that was impossible to explain. It wasn't recognition. It wasn't admiration. It felt like remembering a melody without recalling where it had first been heard. They looked toward the entrance for reasons they could not describe. The famous guest looked in their direction at precisely the same moment. Neither smiled. Neither spoke. The distance between them was still too great. People moved between them. Conversations resumed. The moment passed. Or so it seemed. Because neither of them realized that someone standing only a few feet away had quietly witnessed that brief exchange. An elderly volunteer lowered her head with a gentle smile, reached into her bag, and removed another weathered envelope. Softly, almost to herself, she whispered, "So, it has finally begun." And inside that envelope rested a handwritten letter addressed to only one of them, a letter that had remained unopened for more than 20 years, waiting for the exact moment when two separate stories would finally begin to meet. The elderly volunteer held the weathered envelope with extraordinary care, as though it contained more than paper. It carried time itself. For decades, she had honored a promise made to someone who believed that certain moments should never be rushed. She had often wondered whether the right day would ever come, or whether the letter would remain unopened forever. Yet the quiet exchange of glances she had just witnessed answered every doubt. Not because two strangers had instantly recognized one another, but because both had arrived with open hearts instead of expectations. She approached them one at a time. First, she greeted the well-known guest with the same warmth she offered every visitor. There was no special treatment, no excitement over their public identity. She simply smiled and placed the envelope into their hands. "I was asked to give this to you only when you stopped looking for applause and started listening for peace," she said softly. The famous guest looked at her with surprise. "Who asked you?" The volunteer's smile deepened. "Someone who believed your greatest chapter would begin after you learned that influence means very little without genuine connection." There were no further explanations. Only quiet confidence. A few minutes later, she found the other person and offered a second envelope, nearly identical to the first. "I've been waiting a long time for today," she whispered. Confused but curious, they carefully opened the letter. Inside was a handwritten message. It did not predict the future. It did not promise romance. It simply said, "When life introduces you to someone whose path is different from yours, do not measure them by their reputation. Listen to the way your spirit responds when kindness enters the room." Some meetings are valuable not because they change your status, but because they remind you who you have always been. Reading those words stirred something profound. Every recent hesitation, every unexpected invitation, every ordinary decision that had seemed insignificant suddenly formed a beautiful pattern. None of those moments had been random. They had become stepping stones leading both lives toward a lesson neither could have discovered alone. The famous guest unfolded their own letter. Its message was different, yet perfectly connected. "You have spent years being recognized by millions who know your name but not your heart. When you finally meet someone who sees the person behind the title, do not hide behind success. Let honesty become your introduction." For several quiet moments, they simply stood there. Not overwhelmed. Not dramatic. Just deeply moved. The room around them continued buzzing with conversation, laughter, and music, yet everything felt strangely peaceful. Fame no longer occupied the center of the story. Neither did mystery. What mattered now was authenticity. As the evening continued, the event organizer invited everyone to gather for one final conversation about hope. Instead of delivering a polished speech, the well-known guest surprised the audience. "I came here believing I was accepting an invitation to speak," they said with a gentle smile. "Now I realize I was invited here to listen." A quiet ripple of emotion moved through the room. They shared no sensational stories. No tales of celebrity. Instead, they spoke about how easy it is to chase recognition while overlooking relationships, how achievement can fill calendars without always filling hearts, and how the most meaningful encounters often arrive disguised as ordinary moments. People listened with complete attention because the words felt sincere. When the gathering ended, conversations naturally unfolded among strangers who no longer felt like strangers. Acts of kindness appeared everywhere. People exchanged encouragement, shared laughter, and thanked volunteers who had quietly served behind the scenes all evening. Eventually, the two individuals whose journeys had slowly drawn together found themselves standing near the garden outside the building. For a moment, neither spoke. The evening breeze carried the fragrance of fresh flowers after the earlier rain. Lanterns glowed softly along the pathway, creating a warm light that felt almost timeless. Finally, one of them smiled. "I almost didn't come." The other laughed gently. "So did I." They both realized how many small decisions had nearly kept them apart. A delayed response. A changed schedule. A forgotten invitation. A moment of hesitation. Any one of those choices could have rewritten the evening. Instead, each ordinary decision had quietly guided them toward a conversation neither would ever forget. They spent the next hour talking not about accomplishments or public attention, but about family, purpose, childhood dreams, disappointments, gratitude, and the quiet hope that every person carries somewhere inside. Neither tried to impress the other. Neither pretended to be someone else. That honesty became the true beginning of their connection. Whether their paths would grow into lifelong friendship, creative partnership, or something even more meaningful was a story still waiting to unfold. What mattered most was that both left transformed. The famous individual rediscovered the freedom of being known for who they were rather than what they had achieved. The other discovered that remarkable people are often most remarkable when they set aside every title and simply choose to be present. As they walked away under the evening sky, the elderly volunteer watched from the doorway with peaceful eyes. She quietly folded the empty envelopes and whispered, "The invitation was never about bringing two people together. It was about bringing two hearts back to what matters most." And perhaps that is the quiet truth hidden inside this fictional story. Sometimes the invitation that changes everything is not an invitation to fame, success, or recognition. Sometimes it is an invitation to become more compassionate. To remain open when life surprises you. To notice the ordinary moments that may quietly shape extraordinary memories. To believe that kindness still has the power to connect lives in ways no schedule can predict. If this story found you at just the right moment, may it remind you to welcome unexpected opportunities with wisdom, treat every person with genuine respect, and never underestimate the quiet significance of a single thoughtful choice. May your path be filled with hope when uncertainty appears, peace when life feels overwhelming, courage when new doors open, and joy that grows through kindness shared with others. And if this story encouraged your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a little hope today. Until our next fictional journey together, may peace, light, and encouragement walk beside you wherever your path leads.